answers. So I'd actually like to kick things off right now by asking you a question, which is what brings you here and why are you interested in storytelling in particular? So if you could use the Q&A box to put in your answer to that question, that would be great. And then I'll read out as you put in some of these answers so that everyone kind of gets a sense of who's in the room, so to speak. As you go to your Q&A box and put in the answer to the question, what brings you here and why are you interested in storytelling? I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of this webinar, and I'll start with just some background and why we've decided to focus on fundraising and focus on using the authenticity of storytelling to apply it to fundraising. And then we'll tell you a little bit about a specific client with whom we've worked with for who this has been really beneficial and how they've kind of uncovered the source of a pitch that turned out to be really kind of quite phenomenal for them in terms of their growth. And then I'll describe a little bit more what this fundraising story online workshop is with its 4 modules over a month starting on May 3rd. And then if you stick around long enough, which I hope you will, you'll actually get an exclusive discount only for the people on this webinar. So be sure to stick around right up to the end. And if you stick around right up to the end, you'll get this exclusive discount, but also you'll get a chance to ask any question that you have about any of the content that I'm about to share in this webinar. So I see that we've got some answers trickling in here, so I'm going to read out a few. So I'm here because I'm starting a number of civil society initiatives with other people, and we need to fundraise for these. As they leave the conventional formats, this is in quotes, behind, I feel we need to approach fundraising in a novel way too. Authenticity is key to us as well. Thank you for that. That's great. You're in the right place. Here's another one that says, unstable nonprofit funding from federal and state sources have compelled our organization to refine our approaches to funders. We need a more compelling way to describe how we are unique. And then I'm just going to read one more who says that I'm a relatively new development coordinator for a small to medium national nonprofit and want to know more ideas for fundraising. Great. Well, thanks so much for sharing these. Please keep them coming because we actually want to keep those up, and they kind of inform how we're actually going to conduct even the workshop itself when we do that in May. So thank you so much for these answers. As we go along, I'll share a few more. So I want to give you a little bit of a background. Someone said here, that they want to use the authenticity of story. They want to be more compelling, that there's a context that's a bit more unstable in terms of sources of funding. So you kind of have to, I'm interpreting that as kind of having to think a little bit outside the box and find new ways of presenting yourself so that you will gain the funds that you need to hit your developmental goals. And I just want to say that that's kind of exactly why we created this fundraising story workshop. Narativ has been around since 2000, and even before that, the founders of Narativ, Murray Nossel and Paul Brody, were engaging in listening and storytelling as a way of life and as a way of supporting others to tell their stories, very much with a kind of an advocacy slant. And so we've kept that up, and we've created a method of listening and storytelling that gets applied to a lot of different things in a lot of different kind of contexts. For example, we've worked with Facebook's marketing team recently. We work with foundations like the Open Society Foundations and UNICEF. And also we've worked with many startup enterprises, whether they're social enterprises, whether they're tech enterprises, for-profit, non-profit. And what we've noticed is that people come to us with very similar challenges when it comes to tell the story of their organization and why it matters and why other people should care so much that they would actually be willing to give money for it. And so we've actually listed a few of those challenges, and I wanted to repeat them here, and I'm reading them off. If I'm looking off to the side, it's because I'm reading these 3 challenges. So the one, for example, is you have a great idea, but since it's not a thing yet, it feels abstract and it lacks that kind of emotional resonance, right? Another challenge that people have told us about and that we've kind of addressed is that you have data and analytics that kind of support your company, your vision, your program, and what it is that you want to do, but then the way that you present it becomes dry and complex because it's all about data and statistics. And we'll actually hear a lot more when I tell you the story of a specific client, because what she was telling me, it's just not sexy, right? And then the third challenge that we've talked about is you've got a solid concept, but funders want to know more about you and who is the person that's actually behind this. How did you come up with the idea? Why did you come up with the idea? Why does it matter to you? And that's really the message that I want to give everyone today, is that it actually starts with you. It doesn't actually start with your concept or your idea because you had it. So it starts with you because you've got the idea, you've got the concept. Even if you're a program officer and you're coming in new and you're trying to develop new things within that organization, you're the one who's presenting these programs. You're the one who is responsible for doing that. So you have to kind of bring yourself into it, even if it's not your idea, right? So it's all about you. And that's what that third challenge, I would say across the board, whoever we work with, it's always, why does this matter to you? Because me as a listener, as a viewer, as a reader, I want to know about the person who's actually going to pull this together, right? So the basic question that we're trying to answer here is, how do I convey my idea, my program, my company's vision in a way that'll connect with people in such a way that they're going to feel compelled to actually support it in financial ways, right? So that's kind of fundraising. So I want to tell you a little bit now about one specific client who came to us, and she's the one who came to me saying, it's just not sexy what I'm doing. I was doing a presentation in 2011 at an organization called Echoing Green. Echoing Green supports social enterprises all over the world, and they fund social entrepreneurs for a year to get their ideas and programs off the ground. And so after that presentation, I got a phone call from a person named Richard, who is in charge of the new fellows at Echoing Green. And he said, you know, I've got a new fellow. Her name is Amy. Her company is called Measures for Justice. And she has this amazing idea to reform the criminal justice system that no one else has come up with. I haven't seen anything like it. And she needs help. And she needs help because it's all about data. It's all about statistics. And she just needs help to kind of bring it to life, right? And so I said, sure, okay, you know, let her have me, you know, give me a call. And so I speak to Amy, and the first thing that I asked her, well, just tell me about Measures for Justice. And she said, well, you know, we measure everything in America. If you want to know which school to send your kid to, you can go online and find out what the best schools are in your neighborhood according to what kinds of criteria. If there are certain types of criteria that you prefer, you can look at that and you'll know where to send your kid, right? If you need to go to the hospital and you want to know what the best hospitals are in your state, in your city, for a particular type of care, same thing. We can measure that. There are many, many types of criteria that we can look for. Same with sports. If you look at a sports games, it's all about analytics. We know all about our athletes, you know, what they measure, et cetera, like how fast do they run and that kind of thing. And we have statistics that compare them to others. If anybody's seen the movie Moneyball, you know what I'm talking about, right? And so what she then said was, so we measure everything in America. The only thing we don't measure is our criminal justice system. And Measures for Justice does just that. It measures the criminal justice system, and that's why we exist. And so I looked at her and I said, okay, you know, I was on the phone with her, so I didn't look at her. I kind of went silent a little bit, and I said to her, okay, but I'm still left wondering, why does it matter? Like, why do I need to support this? And then she kind of said, you know, well, of course it matters. It matters because I've been across the US county by county. I wrote this book called Ordinary Injustice, and through the investigations and the research that I've done because of the book, I've been to all these counties and talked to countless prosecutors and judges and public defenders and county clerks. And I've seen the ways in which people don't get justice in this country, and that it happens at a local level. And I said, whoa. You wrote a book called Ordinary Injustice. You've been across the country, county by county. So that means you've talked to people. And she said, yes, of course, I've talked to a lot of people. And I said, well, that's where we need to go. That's the story that we have to uncover for you. That's what I need to hear. This whole thing about how we don't measure the criminal justice system and we measure all these things, great, but I need to hear the story. I need to hear the stories of why this matters to you. What happened in your life that made you want to create measures for justice? So that's what we did. She came in and we started to talk. And the first story that well, not the first, actually, we uncovered many different kinds of experiences that she'd had along the road. And that's really the process that we talk a lot about at Narativ, and that you'll go through in this online workshop, is really uncovering the experiences that you've had, and without any kind of leaving no stone unturned, right? You might think that there's something that's not valid because it makes sense to you and it's obvious to you. It's not obvious to me. It's not obvious to the people that you're asking money to, right? And so we pay a lot of attention to that. So we did the same thing with Amy. And we found one particular instance that was very, very resonant for Amy herself. She just kept coming back to it. So that's when I said, well, we should go back to the one that resonates the most with you first. And that's the story of Sharon. And we're going to put up a slide right now that actually kind of shows you a little bit of that. Sharon is a woman who's from Quitman County in Mississippi. And that's her in the middle. And that's also her on these two pictures on the side. These two pictures on the side were taken at the hospital because she had been beaten up by her ex-boyfriend under a bridge while her two nieces were locked up in her ex-boyfriend's pickup truck. So he beat her up with a wrench and then went back into the pickup truck and left her for dead. She actually survived. She went to the hospitals. These pictures were taken there. She pressed charges. She separated from her boyfriend, and no charges were brought. The prosecutor never brought this case to a judge. And Amy's telling me this. And so Amy says, so I tried to go and find out why. I asked, first of all, Sharon, why do you think that happened? She says, well, I have no idea, but I didn't get justice. And so what Amy then did is that she went to the county clerk, and the county clerk's name is Miss Wiggs. Miss Wiggs is a woman who's got a helmet of white hair. She's been in this system for about 30 years. And she does her work in a room that's about 200 to 300 square feet. And it's got floor-to-ceiling binders full of cases that she's written out by hand over the years. That's their system of collecting what's going on in this county. And she's doing it on her own, right? Amy's describing all of this to me. And then Amy asks Miss Wiggs, have you heard about Sharon's case? Could you find it in one of these binders? And she goes through the binders kind of painstakingly. And finally, she finds the prosecutor who the charges went to. And by law in Mississippi, every case has to be tried, right? And so this prosecutor, she looks up and she looks back to Amy and she says, well, it looks like in Quitman County, there has not been a single case of domestic violence prosecuted in 21 years. Now, does that mean that there's no domestic violence in Quitman County? Sharon's story would show us that that's not the case, right? And so then Amy kind of takes this information and she says, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. And Miss Wiggs says, for all I know, this is happening everywhere else. I just have no way of knowing, right? I just know that this is happening in Quitman County. And so Amy goes to the prosecutor now and she asked the prosecutor and she said, I looked into this one case. I met this woman named Sharon. I met Miss Wiggs and she's told me that you haven't prosecuted a case in 21 years. And the prosecutor's answer was, has it really been that long? I still have chills when I hear that, right? And now what I got from that story that we uncovered with Amy was the problem that she's facing, right? So she had a very compelling way of making me care about this. What can I now do if you're going to fix this system in which there's no accountability, in which this prosecutor can do this, even though by law he's required to bring these cases to court? What is going on here, and how are you going to do that? So now she was able, from there, Amy, to tell us what Measures for Justice is, what their solutions are, how this portal is going to work, how it's going to make everyone accountable, and how people will actually be able to see county by county how they're doing compared to another county. So that someone like Sharon, if she's not getting justice, she can actually go to an advocacy group and she can say, look at this data. look at what's going on in my county, and look at what's going on in the next door county, which, and this is true actually, the next door county was prosecuting every case of domestic violence. So that's kind of how we got to that. And then Amy used that story in absolutely every fundraiser that she had. When Richard called me from Echoing Green and said, you know, she's got a fundraiser in 6 weeks, could you help her? She went to that fundraiser, she hit her fundraising goals, and then not only that, but she continued to use the same story. And as she went from next level to next level, now they're actually in 5 states. They started with 1 state, they're in 5 states. In 5 years, they'll be in 20 states. They actually hit their 5-year goal in just 2 years in terms of revenue and fundraising. That's the power of an authentic story that comes from you. And so what we help you to do is to actually find what that authentic story is for you, right? That was Amy's, you have one too. So the point of this workshop that we've created called Fundraising Story is really to dig into your own story. And this next slide that we're looking at is how the Fundraising Story Online Workshop actually works. So it's going to work on in a little bit of a different format than what we are on here, which is in which you are now just seeing me, right? But in this Zoom software that we're using, and for this workshop, you'll actually be able to work with people in the workshop as well, right? So I'll be the trainer, I'll be giving you all these guidelines and tips on how to find your story, and you'll get to practice a lot, but not just with me. You'll practice with other people, like-minded people, like the ones that I'm seeing right now that are still, whose answers are still trickling in. I'm seeing one, for example, that says to better pitch our organization's story to potential funders. Very simple, right? So that person can now talk to another person who is looking at, I'm a relatively new development coordinator for a small to medium national nonprofit, and I want to know more ideas for fundraising. So you can start to share ideas and your stories within this workshop. And we go module by module, starting with the story identification and starting with your audience, who's actually listening, right? Even if for now it's an audience of 1 and it's just you, right? You're listening to yourself, and you kind of have to get over some of those obstacles that perhaps are getting in the way of you uncovering that authentic story that's going to unlock this wonderful pitch that you have in you. Module 2 is about excavating, crafting, and practicing. So really quite straightforward. We use a group format, and we use concrete examples to kind of help you see how you might be able to practice and give you some models. And module 3 and module 4 are about looking at media applications, right? So if I go back to the Measures for Justice story for a second, that story is saying that story, you know, was used in different kinds of media, right? And so if you go to their website, actually, you'll see that they have a video in which they tell the story of Sharon and the story of Miss Wiggs. You'll actually even see Sharon and Miss Wiggs on that video. They made that video 3 years after I started to work with them. And this is the website of Measures for Justice that we're starting to see now. So we look at media considerations, we look at what's the best medium for you, and you'll even get to create a mock media campaign for your story, right? And that's really in module 4 that we look at that, and you get to practice that and get some feedback from others as well. So that's the Fundraising Story Online Workshop. I want to get back to what I promised exactly 20 minutes ago, which was an exclusive discount for the people who stick around long enough for this webinar. So we're actually going to put that on the screen now as well. You can have a 25% discount if you use the discount code WINNINGPITCH, which has disappeared from the, but now it's back. Winning Pitch, this is all about drama and storytelling, that's what we're doing. And so if you go to fundraisingstory.eventbrite.com, you can put in your discount code Winning Pitch and you will get a 25% discount. I want to remind people of the dates, which is going to be May 3rd is the first start, and then every week there'll be a module of 90 minutes. Each module is 90 minutes, and they all start at noon Eastern time. I'm talking to you from our offices in Industry City in New York City, by the way, so we are on Eastern time. I'd love to, now that I've given you all these details and all this information, I'd love to open it up to questions. You're going to see actually in the chat part that's on the left-hand side, again at the top corner left-hand side of your computer, there's a couple of things here that my colleague Sasha has put in, which is measuresforjustice.org and fundraisingstory.eventbrite.com with a reminder of what that discount code is. So if you go back also now to the Q&A part, I'd love to hear some questions, or read rather some questions that you have about anything that you like around storytelling, around narrative, around this workshop. Any questions? We are now open for the next 5 minutes or so. All right, so as we're doing that, I am going to read a few more of these answers in terms of what people are doing and why, what brought them here. I'm working in development for a not-for-profit, and storytelling is always part of the job description. So again, kind of a reminder that it's all about storytelling, but then how do you do that, right? So that's what this workshop is going to be about. We're doing something deep and complex. So I'm interested in developing a simple story. That's really interesting because our work with Amy was very much about that, was very much about kind of taking all these different experiences that she had on the road and then find the really essential, simple story, tell it in a very simple way, right? Very straightforward. Someone else says, I want to give examples in my topic area so that they get it, in quotes. Plus, stories are very relatable and inspiring. Yes, absolutely. They create that emotional resonance. Interested, and I think, yeah, so let's see. Are there any questions that are coming in at this point? If you want to put in some questions, I'm being signaled that I should be asking for that. I'm sorry, I'm just going to... There's two new ones, which I'm not seeing. Why am I not seeing them? Let's see. All to the bottom. Oh, okay, there we go. Okay. Many funders have very fixed and conventional submission formats. How does one break the fixed narrative presented by these formats without subverting them completely? Yeah, many funders have very fixed and conventional submission formats. So yes, absolutely. How does one break the fixed narrative presented by these formats without subverting them completely? I think story is always told within a particular context, right? So it really starts with who your audience is. That's what we do in Module 1. Who's that audience? What do they actually want to hear and need? And so if it's a submission format and you have to kind of stick to that, there's still a way, though, to bring in a personal story there. And that's what you would be looking at there. So you're not subverting it completely, but rather you're looking for ways to bring the story into that sort of conventional submission format. And through our work with Open Society Foundations, we've seen this done quite a bit, actually, ourselves. I'm going to move on to the next one. What if there's not a single incident, but a cumulative impact of many incidents that drove you to do what you did? It's a great question. And that's kind of the process that we go into. It's like a funnel, essentially. So you take everything cumulatively that's happened, but then you do have to make a choice. And we help you to make that choice on that single incident, which, by the way, if you look at the story that I told about Amy and Sharon, she had many incidents again, and it was the one that resonated the most with her, where she felt there was the most impact, right? And also the one where there were very clear characters, right? Where there was a clear conflict, clear contrast between the problem and the solution, right? And so a big part of storytelling is resolving what you set up at the beginning. And so with that story of Sharon, what Amy was able to do is by showing what the Measures for Justice portal and those tools can do, she was able to relate it right back to Sharon, right? So you can easily come back to it. So the cumulative impact that you're talking about, you still need to kind of go in and look kind of like it's like a zoom in, basically, and you really zoom in your camera and you focus on that incident, and how are you going to then relay that to this future that you're creating, essentially. And then someone is asking a kind of a technical question: possible to receive discounted costs for a fellow NGO colleague because they're overseas all of May? I'm sure that's possible. We'll have to look at that. And actually, if you are overseas, I don't know which country you're going to be in, but hopefully the time might work. If it really doesn't work, then absolutely you should be able to give it to a fellow NGO colleague. We can maybe answer that question if you send us an email. If you send me an email at jerome@narativ.com. And then the cost is $195, and so we would apply our 25% discount to that cost, which brings it under $150. So that's quite a good discount and quite a good deal for these 4 modules. I'm actually going to have to stop now because we are at a little bit past the 20 minutes that we talked about. I want to thank everyone for participating in this webinar, and I want to thank you for your questions. I want to thank you for the answers you gave up top. I really hope to see you in May in our fundraising story online workshop. Please send an email to Jerome@narativ.com, NARATIV.com. If you have any more questions, if you have any sort of questions about the discount, if you want to send people to this workshop that you know would benefit from this, please do so. Don't hesitate. I'm always happy to meet new people and hear about your challenges and see how we can help you. So thank you so much, and I'm going to say goodbye now and log off, and I hope to see you very, very soon.